Today, we'll learn about balanced price ranges, the BPR. This will be a crazy trading video for day traders and scalpers. You'll learn about special imbalances, super BPR, liquidity hunts, inducement, supply and demand trading, order blocks, and so on. We have so much to do. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading, check out my free course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. And please try to watch the videos in order, otherwise it can confuse you. Since I got thousands of mails for balanced price ranges, I decided to make a video about it. It is actually an extremely simple smart money concept. Let's take a look at it. To have a BPR, you need at least two imbalances presented. What happens is extremely simple. The intersection, the collision area of two imbalances will give you the balanced price range. So we consider these areas as special reaction zones. This is where we look for entries. How to identify the balanced price range? Let's have a couple of examples. Look at this chart. Where are the imbalances? You can spot these two imbalances easily. Nothing complicated about them, right? Then where is the BPR? Yes, the intersection zone of those two imbalances. As I said, very simple. See this example? First, identify all possible imbalances. Very easy to do. Then find the collisions. Here you have your balanced price range. Nothing complicated. Now, what is a BPR? What actually happens? Why do they even exist? The concept of BPR actually comes from failed imbalances. Every trader who learns about imbalances immediately thinks that they found the holy grail and every imbalance should work. Remember, imbalances, order blocks, breaker blocks, supplies and demands, market structure breaks or break of structures. All these can fail. None of these got sent rules. Everything in the world may fail. So sometimes the imbalance will not show any reaction or no market structure break will happen. This is why we mostly try to combine low and high time frames. Confirming a reaction increases our chances and reduces our risks. So basically, there is a switch happening. Like failed order blocks, mostly turn into breaker blocks. The failed imbalance meets with a new imbalance and creates this lovely new special reaction zone. Okay, look at this example. Notice this giant imbalance. Normally, you should be looking for a short here, a reaction from the imbalance which will push the price down. Let's take a closer look at the reaction and what really happens there. Now we are in lower time frames. Notice how the trend is so strong and never reverses. No reaction at all. No market structure to short it. Now what is a super BPR? That's sometimes not really common. Imbalances will keep failing multiple times. This generally creates an extremely sensitive area because price misses so many orders inside these imbalances. And when the time is right, there could be a crazy reaction. It may even start rallies by filling all those missing orders inside imbalances. Take this as a secret note for your notebooks. Super BPR requires at least 3 imbalances. But there's no limit. It could be 4, 5, 10, 20. Let's see how the mega rally started with super BPR. Can you notice where the super BPR is? Yes, in this daily chart, you can notice 3 obvious imbalances. And how the rally started from 20K to 30K. This is a 50% mega move in a matter of days. I remember this moment, it was crazy. Let's check the Forex. What happens here? Price in a bullish mode. Keep making new highs. So, what you look for is simple. A new break of structure. Price pulls back into discount zone. And finally, finds itself a special reaction zone like Super BPR. You can see the Super BPR here in 8 hours time frame with the pound-dollar pair. The problem is Super BPRs are mostly hidden. You have to go through multiple time frames to see it. They are hidden for a reason. Now, you saw a break of structure method to trade. What about other methods? What can we do with balanced price ranges? Let's have a look. First of all, finding BPR in high time frames is quite effective. This will create a very important reaction zone. Of course, you can trade them with only high time frames without a market structure break. But if you can confirm a structure break at the reaction point, this will definitely improve your winning rate. As I tweeted recently, the more patient and boring you are, your win rate will increase. Trading is a boring job. I think the Buddhists could be the amazing traders. Okay, check out this chart. Price makes a break downwards. Not the best quality, but still it could be useful for us. Where is the balanced price range? Yes, right here. Let's look at the much lower time frames in this area and how the price reacts to this high time frame balanced price range. You can easily spot the market structure and how the price shifts here, getting help from my premium and discount zone tool. Now, here is the quiz for you. If you can find the Super BPR in this chart, type BPR in the comment section. I'm waiting. Yes, right here, a tiny one. Not everyone can spot this, but look at it. It is just pure crazy how it reacts to Super BPR. Another way to use balanced price ranges is the lower time frame entries. But how? For example, if you can spot a significant liquidity hunt with high time frames or a usable supply-demand area, you can go to lower time frames and look for a low time frame balanced price range and a possible reaction. This is a great strategy actually. Check out this example. Price is in a bearish mode and making mostly lower lows. After this break, price pulls back into the premium zone and become expensive again, and hunts a very significant high in the chart, which is basically a superb quality swing failure pattern. It also collides with this giant order block. What else do we have here? Check the significant inducement. Price hunting all these internal liquidity as well. Let's zoom in on this area. Let's discover what is really happening inside this reaction. Now, let's have an idea about price levels by using the premium and discount tool. As you can see, price wicks the EQ point and clears all this internal liquidity. But what else could we look for? Notice the BPR. How perfectly the price reacts to this BPR. It is magnificent, is it not? Range EQ and BPR combo. Okay folks, with this video we have learned a lot about managing trades and useful trading methods. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.